Hello, Visions families and staff. Welcome to this session of the virtual curriculum fair. I'm joined by Nick from Open Up Resources, who will be sharing today about one of our math core options for the 25-26 school year. Nick, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Kaylee. Hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Nick Martin. I'm coming to you from Sacramento, so it's always good to meet with folks from the local area. I'm going to be talking about our K-8 math curriculum. Something to know about me, I'm a former classroom teacher and a parent of two boys here in Sacramento. And yeah, without further ado, we'll jump right in. So we're going to start off with just a structure overview and then move forward by talking about ways that you can support your student through a lot of the embedded supports that we have, and then some of the materials that you'll have access to. So a few things to know about the curriculum itself. It is all problem-based and centered around students. Students are going to kick things off by doing math and keep doing math. This is definitely not a curriculum where you as the teacher are the holder of all the knowledge. You're really going to help facilitate your students' learning. For you all, you're going to be delivering a curriculum that has a really good balance of conceptual understanding or why you're doing what you're doing, and procedural fluency. So your students be able to develop the ability to do a lot of these problems with fluency, but at the same time understanding why they're doing what they're doing. There's going to be a coherent mathematical story, meaning all of the stuff that your students are going to be learning is going to be interconnected. So instead of doing like a simple geometry unit and then fractions, you're going to be doing them together, and using geometry to make sense of fractions and vice versa. And then in the teacher guides, I'll point this out, but there are lots of what we call points of use supports. So strategies for how you can support your students through any given lesson. For those students, the contexts are going to be engaging. There's going to be a lot of collaboration opportunities. So opportunities for you to really engage in discussion about the mathematics, and helping your students make sense of it through communication. And then something that I really appreciate and have seen evidence of with my own eyes is this idea of developing math identities. So really giving students the tools that they need to really think about themselves as mathematicians and not just kids who have to do math. So here's a quick kind of breakdown of the curriculum. You'll notice I've got all grades K through 8 up on the screen, the total number of units and lessons. Every grade level will have some additional optional lessons. These are really designed just to kind of expand on learning, not necessarily to introduce new stuff. The lessons in K5 are designed to be around 60 minutes, and then those lessons in 6-8 are going to be around 50. And you'll have a wide array of different assessment options. So those are going to include pre-unit practice problems, just to get a sense of what your students know already going into a particular unit. Cool downs, these are going to be end of lesson assessments to give you a sense of how things are progressing. There's going to be some section checkpoints where your students will kind of pause on learning new information and do a quick assessment. Again, just to give you a sense of how they're progressing, and then end of unit assessments to check their learning at the end of every unit, obviously. Something to know about the number of units. You'll see there's a range from 8 to 9. The last unit and every grade level is called putting it all together. Those units, you won't be teaching and your students won't be learning new standards and new concepts. It's really an opportunity, as the name implies, to kind of put it all together and make those smaller stories into one large combined story, just to make sense of everything they learned, kind of synthesize it all, if you will, at the very end. All right. So this graphic at first glance is very busy. There's lots of stuff going on, but this is probably one of the more helpful tools you'll have access to. So this is our unit dependency chart. And let me decipher a little bit of this for you. So you're going to see some green arrows moving horizontally. These green arrows are showing you how individual units within any given grade level are connected to one another. So you'll see that that row that starts with K.1 and ends with K.8. Well, that's your kindergarten kind of spectrum. And you'll see that K1 or Unit 1 is going to provide all the background information you need for K2, which is going to help your students with K4. Notice though with K3, no green arrow, but there's that light blue arrow that's moving vertically or moving downward to 1.7. So let's say, hypothetically, you've got a first grade student who you're supporting, and you get to 1.7 and you realize, you know what, we did the pre-unit assessment, but man, my students seems like they might struggle with this unit. Well, something that's very cool about our curriculum that I'll touch upon in more detail later is that everything I'm going to show you is actually available for free on our website. And so as that first grade teacher, you're going to have access to the kindergarten curriculum where you can actually go back to K.3 and maybe pull some lessons or a center or maybe even some practice problems to help better build that understanding that your student needs in 1.7. And you'll see as you progress down the chart, all of that interconnectedness that's built in there in the curriculum and as what we call an open education resource you'll have access to. So we have our K5 unit dependency and then our 6-8 unit dependency. One thing that these graphics are missing is that they look like there is no connection between K5 and 6-8. I'll have to upgrade these slides. We have a more cohesive dependency chart that I can share with Kaylee and the team, and they can share out to all of you. But there is a connection between, fifth and sixth, and these arrows keep going down. If you follow this as kind of like a maze, you'll see that kindergarten is going to inform what you do in first grade, which is going to inform second grade, and so on. So there really is a full K-8 continuum where if your student starts in kindergarten, by the time they get to K-8, or sorry, 8th grade, they're going to have all the proper background information and development of skills that's going to help them get through that 8th grade curriculum, no problem. Okay, so there's kind of like the big picture of the curriculum. Now we're going to start diving deeper into kind of the lesson level. So every lesson and unit and even grade level itself is going to follow this cyclical design. So everything, again, from grade level to unit to lesson, and even within an individual activity, is always going to have some sort of kickoff opportunity, or what we call an invitation to the mathematics. Once we've checked that box, students are going to transition into engaging in the mathematics, really working with the content itself. And then everything's going to end up with some sort of connection or synthesis. And again, this is going to happen all the way down to the activity level. I'm going to use these graphics to kind of highlight that. So at the lesson level in grades K through 1, you're always going to start off with a warm-up. And students are going to be diving into math, doing mathematical tasks within the first few minutes of every single lesson. Once that warm-up is done and you've helped make those connections, they're going to dive into their first activity. After that activity, you're going to do some more synthesis or helping them make sense of that activity. If there's more than one, then you'll go back to the activity and do the activity synthesis in this kind of cycle, and then end every lesson with a synthesis, or again, an opportunity to kind of put it all together. In grades K1, there are going to be, well, there's always cool downs across all K8 lessons, but in grades K1, there are additional centers. These are going to be hands-on opportunities for your students to continue to make sense of things and really understand those concepts, and not just, you know, what, how to add, but why are you adding? What does addition really mean? In grades 2 through 5, you're going to follow that same progression. This time, those centers are going to be more optional. So maybe when you're doing like a cool down or one of those mid-section checkpoints, you're noticing, you know, things aren't really sticking. Maybe if you have a third grade student, you can refer to the teacher guide, pull out one of those centers, and just help continue some of that practice. You know, I know for me, I learned mathematics far more when I had kind of hands-on opportunities and can really manipulate and see how things work. And maybe you have a student who's similar to I am, and those centers could be really valuable tools. And then grades 6 through 8, we don't have centers anymore, but you are going to follow that warm-up activity synthesis progression and have additional practice problems for your students. There are always going to be practice problems in our curriculum, but in grades 6 through 8, the number kind of increases and you know, are there for additional practice. One thing I always tell our teachers, regardless of where they teach and how they teach, a lesson synthesis is probably the most important moment in a given day. If you're running short on time and you realize, you know what, we're not going to get through all of our activities, that's fine. Never want you to sacrifice a lesson synthesis. And I have a really good analogy. Imagine you're watching like a trilogy of movies like Lord of the Rings or Back to the Future. And at the end of the first movie, you stop with like 30 minutes left. And then the next day, you start part 2 and you end with like 30 minutes left. Well, by the time you get to the third movie, very little of it is going to make any sense. And you're going to watch that third movie and have all these questions and be confused and wonder, how did that character get there? And what happened to that guy? And why are we in this place? Well, synthesis, lesson synthesis is a lot like that. It's that crucial moment in the story where you need to make sense of it all in order to then get to that next day and feel confident and understand what it is you're doing. So never, ever leave out a lesson synthesis. And then one thing I think is really helpful for all teachers to know is that in addition to, you know, that lesson progression and you'll have lesson plans that are going to help you with that warm up and activity and how to guide your students through that synthesis. You're also going to have these really great instructional routines. These are going to be routines that are going to come up again and again to help your students really demonstrate their learning in predictable ways, but also allow them a way to really contribute to this larger conversation that our curriculum not only promotes, but is really centered on. And so these routines for students and especially you as teachers are going to be predictable. You're going to have a lot of call outs in your teacher editions that are going to help you set these up. So, one of these routines you'll see called number talks. Well, the first time a number talk pops up at any given grade level, we give you all the kind of the preparation you'll need, things to think about, even like not a script per se, but maybe some sample questions or statements that are going to help your student make sense of that routine. But I know as a former teacher, having routines are really great ways to keep things organized and keep things moving. So I've talked a little bit about assessments, but just wanted to do just maybe a slightly deeper dive. I've mentioned there are going to be practice problems throughout the entire curriculum. Those practice problems could happen at the beginning of a unit, again, serving as kind of like a pre-assessment, if you will, just get a sense of what your students know going into any given unit. There's going to be practice problems at the lesson level as well. And then there's going to be exploration problems. And these are problems that are going to allow your student to do maybe a little bit deeper dive in the content. Maybe, kind of push their understanding, do things that maybe are a little bit more complicated or challenging. I mentioned there's going to be section checkpoints. So these are going to be moments either like halfway through a unit or towards the end of a unit. Again, just to give you a sense of how things are going. And then there's going to be our end of lesson assessments, what we call cool downs, and then end of unit assessments. Just kind of a visual of what assessments may look like in any given unit. So down in the lesson level, we'll have practice problems and cool downs. You'll see on this timeline how those lessons are going to be broken up into sections, and we're going to have maybe a section checkpoint, and then that end of unit for the entire unit itself. Okay. So I mentioned in the opening these built-in or points of use supports we have. I want to highlight some of those for you. So one of these are kind of like routines, but one of the supports that you'll have access to are what are called MLRs, or math language routines. These math language routines are really great tools for all students because regardless of their grade level or ability level, they're still developing their mathematical language and their ability to communicate what it is that they're learning. But these are also really great tools for English learners. If you're in a household where English is a second language, these MLRs can be really great tools. And for really all students, regardless of their needs or abilities, these are really great ways to help them develop their mathematical language, regardless of wherever they are in their abilities. Just like those instructional routines that I pointed out earlier, you're going to have those built-in supports for you to prepare for an MLR, how to really execute it in a meaningful way, and know what to do later on if they pop up again, because they will. And these are also great for you as teachers. Again, routines are so important for keeping things predictable and moving things along in a meaningful way. We also have explicit callouts for students with different disabilities or different needs. So we have a list of, some of those needs that any particular lesson might support. But one thing I think is really important is, you've got this call out here, and it's going to provide accessibility for, students who maybe memory is just a challenge for them. But at the same time, this is just really good teaching. And even though it's designed to kind of, maybe specialize in a student with a particular need, it's going to be good for all students. Something we say in education is that, you know, meeting the needs, say, of English language learners and the specialized kind of instructional routines and ways we do so is good for all learners. That's just good teaching. So even if you have a student who, has got the memory of an elephant, this call out could still be helpful for him or her and continue just to, build on their understanding. And really just want to re-emphasize, these tools were designed for teachers, regardless of location or instructional model. We are a company that was founded by and continues to be run by former teachers. In fact, everybody on my sales team, we all started in the classroom. So, we want to meet the needs of all students. But we know in order to do so, we have to meet the needs of all of our teachers as well. So we've got your back when it comes to all the materials. Speaking of, the main two resources that we always advise our teachers purchasing, especially for our folks like yourselves who are teaching at home, is to purchase teacher guides and student workbooks. Now, unlike other curricula, the student workbooks, that's not where the curriculum lies. Yes, they're there as tools for your kids, but they're really there for them to kind of record their thinking and record their work. But because so much of this curriculum is built around conversation and collaboration, a lot of the work is going to happen in that synthesis period. Or, yes, those assessments are really great ways to show what they've learned. But again, being able to really communicate one's thinking is just as important, in my opinion. We all have calculators. I've got a calculator, there's one of my kids, back when he was a fat little baby. But we all have calculators in our pockets, right? Well, learning mathematics isn't about being a human calculator. It's about knowing why you do mathematics. And it's about being able to explain why and what it is that you're doing. And this curriculum is designed to do so. Now, I mentioned that everything is also available online for free. So our teacher guides and our student workbooks can be accessed on our website as well. There's the web address up there that you can go onto to create your own account and to explore. Something to note about our website, though, it was designed with like districts and classroom teachers in mind. The folks on my academic team know that we work with Visions, and and you're not the only homeschool network that we work with. So if you are ever recognizing that, like, oh, I don't have access, for example, to the assessments, make sure that you are in communication and collaborating with your Visions teacher that you're working with, and they would be able to get access to all of the materials using their Visions email address, and can then share them with you either through a PDF or a Word document. So don't let that stop you. Make sure that, again, you're in communication, collaborating with Visions, and we'll ensure that you guys get access to everything that's available for free. So yeah, that wraps up what I wanted to share. I know yesterday we did a little bit of Q&A after talking about ELA. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat or you can come off mute. But either way, I'm going to stick around for a little while to answer any questions that come through. And yeah, if you're hopping off to go to your next session, thank you so much. And yeah, good luck with the rest of the fair and in the upcoming school year.